Hi, welcome to Conscious Kenya. My name is Carolyne Gaithuma. I'm a transformation coach. I am also a mental and emotional wellness, advocate, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to this talk. And today we are talking about family roles, and this talk is very important for us to become self-aware about how we are relating to our family members and how that affects our lives right now and what we can do about it. And the rest of the conversation will continue in a course that we're putting up, and we'll tell you more about it at the end of this talk. So for now, we're talking about family roles, and the talk, of course, is family theater. And the reason why we called it family theater is because everyone is playing a role to achieve a certain dynamic. Just like in the theater, every play tries to build roles and characters around a certain theme and a certain goal. So when families are begun, the man and the woman start a family with a certain intention, and most of it is actually a myth because we are totally idealized and we have this idea of a perfect family and what everybody is supposed to be, and that's where the whole issue begins. And so I just want to start by talking about families and how the dynamic plays out. So families are systems. If you look at your body is a system. It has different organs, it has different cells that play different functions to enable the body function as one and to enable the body function optimally. So in a family system, every part is interdependent on the other. We are all products of evolution, and we've all evolved. Even the family system has evolved. And the goal of a family is to create a cohesive environment so that the shelter, the food, and the protection needs of its members are met. And because of this, it always seems as if the family is interconnected in such a way like they are under the same emotional skin. So what happens in a family system is if one member is anxious, it will infect the other members, and the whole system will try to calibrate itself to achieve balance, or what we call homeostasis. So basically every member, whether dead or alive, whether far or near, is interconnected emotionally. And this is for survival, because the role of family is for survival. Now, this emotional interdependence happens on a spectrum. So from the very good to the very worst. What happens is when anxiety is introduced into the system as a result of maybe one member not being able to regulate themselves emotionally for one reason or another, the rest of the system begins to take on certain roles so that the family's emotional stability can be established. So what happens is that if the strain that is supposed to make the family increase its level of unity and cohesiveness and teamwork to achieve their basic needs is strained, they will work better until a point where it will start working against them. Just like your body. If you're chased by a lion, for example, your body will get into a state where adrenaline will be released and you'll have the flight, fight, freeze response, and you will either freeze or you'll run away or you'll attack the lion. But when the threat is over, your body begins to come back to balance and to get out of survival mode into thriving mode. Now it's the same thing with families. There's so many things that throw families off balance. It could be an illness, it could be a tragedy, it could be anything. It could be one person is going through a life change and they are reacting in a certain way. So the whole family can get into certain roles to regulate the emotions of the family as a system. But then what happens is, and this is the difference, I want you to know that this is the difference between functional families and dysfunctional families, is how long do we stay in this dysfunctionality. That's the difference. And that's the difference between somebody who goes through stress and somebody who is depressed. Somebody who goes through stress, they are able to self-regulate, they get the help that they need, and they go back to balance. Somebody who's depressed, their body cannot regulate the stress hormones, and so they stay stressed for longer periods of time, and it becomes depression. So it's the same thing with a family. So the longer the family stays in the dysfunction, the more the dysfunction will occur, the more the tension, the more the emotional instability in the family will happen. So what happens is when something is thrown at a family and one of its members is not able to self-regulate appropriately, then the family members take on certain roles. Now, the goal of a family, if it's functional, is to deal with the core issue. And so even as people are stepping into different roles, they are not losing sight of the core issue, and they're solving the issue. Now, in a dysfunctional family, the reason why they step into roles is to avoid the core issue. And so today I want us to talk about the roles, because they're called dysfunctional roles because they happen when the family is no longer functional. And we can see from your experience what exactly are you playing, what role are you playing in your family. And then as we go on in the course, we'll talk about the effects of that and more about the family system. So now I want to talk about the roles themselves. So again, before I jump into the roles, it's to say that these roles are flexible. So within a functional family, the roles are flexible. You jump into a different role when there's a different crisis, or a role that is age appropriate. That is the flexibility that comes with the roles in a functional family. But in a dysfunctional family, the roles are rigid. If you took on one role, then the whole family will expect that you are that role, and you cannot get out of that role. Neither can you individuate and become your own person, have self-expression. And that's a difference. So I'm not saying the roles are bad. The difference is, how long are you in that role? Are you the only one in the family who plays that role? And those other factors that we'll discuss in the course. So the first role, the first family role that I want to talk about is the family scapegoat. So if you are the family scapegoat, you are cast aside and you're blamed for the family dysfunction. So whatever problem it is that everyone is trying to solve, or everyone is trying to run around is the problem. They create another problem and blame it on you because they don't want to face the original problem, and thus you become the scapegoat. Now, if you're scapegoated, you may feel rejected, unwanted, unloved, isolated, and so you feel like you need to get attention. Now, scapegoated children either become defiant, and they become very, very, the problematic children, because they have been oriented to know that attention is okay, whether negative or not. And because negative attention works best in some of these dysfunctional families, then they become the defiant one. Now, they could also become the one who is always sick, or is the weakling of the family, and so their weakness and their illness is seen as the problem of the family, so that the family can avoid the real problem. And we'll talk about what the real problems could be in the dysfunctional families. So this kind of children will get problems academically, problems with authority, problems with other siblings. Now, when you're looking at adults who are scapegoated in their childhood, these adults are, like in therapy, we normally see them as the people who will say the truth of the family, like what everyone is avoiding to talk about. These are the ones that, speak the truth when they come for family therapy. And they are also known as the rebel or the black sheep. And I've heard so many people talking about, I'm the black sheep of my family. Yeah, because you're the one who is not willing to look away from the real issue of the family. And because of that, the family brands you as the problem. Now, as you grow up, before I move to the other role, as you grow up and you realize that you've been playing the scapegoat role, you will realize that you have difficulty in connecting with people on a genuine level, and most often than not, you will self-sabotage. Because remember the emotional dynamic of someone who's played this role for a very long time, since childhood. You internally feel rejected, unwanted, unloved, and isolated. So those feelings never leave until you deal with them. And that's the consequence of your life of lack of connection, genuine connection, and self-sabotage. Now, the other role is the caretaker. And with my experience, I've noticed that most of the caretakers are women, because the caretaker is also called the martyr. She will die for that family. Also known as the enabler. When it comes to, there's an addiction in the family, she's normally the enabler, the martyr, and the caretaker. Now, this role is someone who is always committed to the family members being happy. Remember, they think that what the family members need is happiness. They actually are willing and able to bypass the problems of the family just so that people can stay happy. So they are trying to steer everyone away from the problem and just make them happy. So if a good meal will make you guys happy, that's what I'll make. But I still don't want to address the real issue. Now, this caretaker denies the experience that the family is happy. The real issue, the caretaker denies it and behaves as if it doesn't exist. Now, you pick up the pieces. If you're their caretaker, you pick up the pieces, you prevent breakdowns and meltdowns and rock bottoms for people within your family, because you are committed to people staying happy and, avoiding the whole issue, avoiding the experience of the emotions that are brought about by this issue. Now, while the caretaker keeps the family in a balance, and I put quote unquote because it's unhealthy, because remember, there is a false sense of balance when the caretaker is doing the caretaking, because we think that we are okay and we are happy and we are laughing, but the real problem is unsolved. So it's really a false sense of balance, because it prevents the family or the individuals from experiencing the consequences of their actions, from experiencing the healing that they need so that they can grow as people. Because for the caretaker, they are more committed to the system than to the individuals. And so they think this family, they think in terms of this family. And whoever has a problem, it's in relation to this family. So I'm going to solve it for them for the sake of this family. And that's really the mindset of the caretaker. Now, who can be a caretaker? If you look at your life and you are a parented child, not parented, parentified child. So you are probably the firstborn and you are given parents' responsibilities. Take care of your siblings, take care of the house, come back when you get a job and pay school fees for your siblings. That one can be the caretaker, because you are doing stuff that is not age appropriate. You're taking on the role of your parent. And so you get into that zone of caretaking. Now, another person who can be a caretaker is an adult who is codependent. So they carry on this caretaking into a marriage, for example, into a relationship. And so what happens in there is that you sort of need the other person to be in need so that you can caretake them. And so what happens is that you connect with people who are in need. You are constantly finding yourself in intimate relationships with people with addictions, with people with mental disorders, with people with chronic illnesses, because you need to caretake. That's like a source of your identity. And you might also struggle with self-esteem issues, anxiety issues, and depression, because you continue to take on the burdens of others in a way that is not healthy, if I may say that. Because your greatest fear as a child, your greatest fear growing up is that the family will fall apart. And what does it mean when the family falls apart? Is when the family falls apart, you'll be alone. You will not have your basic needs met. You will not survive. You'll actually die. So these roles are born from that space. They are born from a space of a need for survival, a fear, a trauma. And that's why you keep propagating the roles even after you have left your family home. Now, the hero is another role. And I see heroes all over. Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, they are all over town because these are people who appear to be high functioning. Those people, like super achievers, their life is their ducks are in a row. Like all their ducks are in a row. I don't know where they are going, but they are totally well balanced, high achievers, good jobs, good money. Why are they in this? Because this is like a role they are playing, because they are like the image of the family, that this family is working, this family is good because so and so works at this place, because so and so is rich, because so and so can save the world. They are the poster child of the family, because the family's main goal is to be seen, even from the outside, to be seen as if it's working, as if it's functional. So the hero comes to save the day. Even when there's a huge issue that needs to be dealt with, they still come in to whitewash. I call it whitewashing. They come to whitewash, and they do that with their achievement, with their money, with their accomplishments, because they are keeping up the family's facade. Now, this is interesting because the hero, in all their actions and all their acts, they support the family in perpetuating the core issue. So it's like we have agreed, let us assume that this is not happening. Let us pretend it's not happening. So the hero comes to create a situation that distracts everybody from what's happening, so that we can say everything is working because so and so is doing very well, and we look away from the core issue. Now, who can be the hero? The hero can be the child who was parentified, again, because they wanted to step in and fit into the parents' role. Those were big shoes to put on. But if you put them well, then the society will applaud you, the family will applaud you. And this is why some parentified children take up that role of the hero. And they put on achievements and success as their brand. Now, these ones, they really exert themselves. Exert is the key word. Exert themselves to help resolve familial issues. You will see some of these people, half of the days of their week, they are going to solve their family's issue. Yeah, it could be a money issue, it could be somebody is in hospital, it could be the uncle of a neighbor is sick. These are the people who will exert themselves. Now, as an adult, if you are the hero, you will be drawn to relationships where the partner is emotionally available, so that you can go and save the day. Because remember, this role has been so ingrained in your personality, in who you are, you actually believe that this is who you are, that you are a hero. The thing about roles, even as I'm speaking about them, is that these roles, in a functional family, you can step in and out of the role as you wish. But in a dysfunctional family, you have to stay in your role. And that's why you carry on your role, even in a family that you yourself are starting. So you step into a relationship, you step into a marriage where you need to keep playing your role. So if you're the hero, you cannot get a functional person, you cannot get a person who is not codependent. You will actually go out to look for someone who is emotionally unavailable, so that you can use your heroic tactics to solve this, because that feels like your life's mission. Now, another thing about heroes, and knowing that they are super achievers, they are people who are addicted to work and achievements. They throw themselves at work, they are working through and through, they are doing all the degrees and all the courses. And when I say that, I'm not saying you don't sign up for this course, but because you need to sign up for this course so that you know how you can step into another role. But yeah, they are addicted to achievements, addicted to success, addicted to work, because that's who they are. And they are trying to also run away from the core issue in the family system. Now, There is another character which is very funny, and this character, this role is the mascot. Do you know any comedian in your family? You know, somebody who will just crack a joke at the wrong time, by the way. Like, or do you know someone who you've been in a relationship with, and when you brought to them, you are either angry or something, instead of them sitting down and listening to you and solving a problem, they cracked a joke. And I've seen that in my discussions with friends. They're like, this guy will just make you laugh out of your anger. It's not normal. It's a role that most people carry on from their childhood. And why are they mascots and comedians? It's because that is their way of diffusing tension within the family system, which is also a way of distracting the family from dealing with the core issue. Because sometimes the issue is so glaring and there's so much tension in the family system, and they are so anxious and afraid of an outburst or an explosion, and they realize that it starts in an interesting way, because you crack a joke and everyone is laughing and you're like, oh, and I thought I would be beaten, or some people would begin to fight. And then you realize, oh, so these jokes actually work. And then you step into that role and you start cracking jokes to diffuse tension. Now what happens is that this is the person who feels immense pressure from the core family issue. If there is someone who is really connected to the emotions of the family, it's this one. And that's why they find whatever means, especially funny means, to ease off the pressure from the system, because they find that this is a volatile situation. Anything could happen. Now, as I said, if you're playing the mascot, you interrupt tense moments with humor. And another thing about mascots, and I've seen this especially in the week when people are talking about mental health awareness, that some people are so funny and yet they die from depression. They die from suicide. It's because that's the role that they've been playing, because they still have so much emotional stuff in them that they're trying to suppress instead of dealing with it, because they have learned how to diffuse tension with humor. And remember, tension is not the issue. There's an issue, there's an underlying issue in the family that creates tension, and then the tension is what people are dealing with, not the issue. So they learn to do that in their own life, and so they might suffer some bouts of depression. Now, as an adult, if you've played this role for so long, you are the family comedian, you will find yourself in dysfunctional relationships, very intense kind of, dysfunctional relationships, so that you are able to step into your role as a comedian, as a mascot, and diffuse the conflict. So you continue your codependent role even in your relationships, and most of the time, most often than not, you bend over backward for others, because for you are really afraid of tension, you're really afraid of conflict, and you use humor. So everybody thinks that you're okay, and everybody feels okay after interacting with you. But the issues build up and build up. And as I'm saying, these roles, if the family dysfunction is not resolved, you grow up in these roles, you move into relationships with these roles, and so you go into relationships that are already set up for your role to mean something, because your role has now become your identity. Now there's another one that we encounter so often, because I've been working with people like this in my life, in my long short life. I have had some in my family, and now I've begun to understand where they're coming from. And this role is what we call the addict, or the identified patient. There's a joke we had in our family. When you're dealing with people, like, you need to see someone, and then we would just say, like the doctor would say, next patient. But now there was one who was always the patient, and that patient either becomes addicted or becomes the one who the family points as the problem. Remember, there's a core issue, but now they have decided that that core issue is this person. The issue is this person. And so you'll find that most families rally around this problem to solve it. They rally around this person with an addiction to help them. And they don't see themselves as part of the addiction. And that is a very difficult aspect of recovery, because most families do not see themselves as playing a part in this addiction or involved in this addiction. Now they, as the addict or identified patient, they signify the culmination of the family's issues. So the family will say, our issues begin and end here with this person. And so they cause, because of how they treat the person, they cause the addiction to intensify. And more conflict arises in the family, more drama happens in the family, and this is a perfect distraction from the real problem, because the real problem still has not been solved. Now, in the therapy, when we are doing therapy, family therapy, you will know who the addict is, because that is who everyone is focusing on when they come for therapy. So they are the family's focus, and they are the one who has brought them there to the therapy. Now, they will even, family will even give their resources, give their time, give their energy to get this one person help, without knowing that they are part of this. Because as I said, a family is a system. It's like a body. If your finger has been cut or your finger has a wound, you don't just take the finger to the hospital. The whole body goes to the hospital. But then as you're sitting at the doctor's, you are saying that this finger has a problem, but the whole body has a problem. And that's what families do not realize, that the addiction is a symptom of a family issue. And so this addict, because of feeling like there's so much focus on them, like, why is everyone blaming me? Why is everyone focusing on me? Because remember, everyone is focusing on them as a way of also running away from their own problems. People are running away from their own problems so that they can focus on this person's addiction. So because of that pressure, the addict feels like, resists treatment. And the reason they resist treatment, because as I said, these are roles that are supposed to help the family get back into homeostasis or balance. The addict does not know any other way to be. The addict doesn't know that they can step out of this role, because they were put in that role by trauma or fear of the family disintegrating. So what happens is that when that role is threatened, like they're supposed to recover and not be an addict anymore, it brings back the fear of this family will fall apart. And that's why you find that if the family does not shift all of it, and the roles become fluid, what's the right word? If the roles do not become fluid, then what happens is the addict cannot move anywhere, because no one else has shifted their role, and the core issue in the family has not been dealt with. So they will resist moving out of that role. So they'll resist treatment, they will relapse. When they have gone to rehab, they will relapse, because the deep core issue of the family has not been solved, and the roles are not fluid, because they are only allowed to stay in that role. And that's why we have so many relapses, because the core issue of the family is not being handled. Now, they also feel a lot of frustration and anger because of being pointed out as a problem, and they feel a lot of emotions. And that's why because as I said, the family system is like people under one emotional skin. It's like the part that is feeling the most pain and has no way of regulating, has no skill of managing these heavy emotions for everybody in the family, decides to medicate with drugs or alcohol or whatever else is their addiction. And then now they are being blamed, and they have carried, they've taken one for the team. So that gives them a lot of anger and frustration. And it's very unconscious, because they don't know why they're doing what they're doing. And you see, the thing about family roles, as you're discovering right now, is that you can be playing two roles in one, or 3, or many, depending on the size of your family. And it's very unconscious. So because this education is not out there, people will not know that they're actually playing roles like in a theater. And so they will not be willing to step out of their roles because they see this as a do or die, that this is how my family functions and this is how I work. Now there's another one who is a lost child. So the lost child is the one that is always mteja, nobody knows where they live, who are they with, where are they, by the way, have you spoken to them? Those are the people we are calling the lost child. There is always a missing person in the family. So, and sometimes you can be the rebel and the lost child. So you rebel and then you go hide. Now the lost child, because they are also attempting to not deal with the issue, the core issue, this is the one that decides, I'm just gonna blend in the background like a chameleon so that I don't get any attention, nobody is saying anything about me, mi niko tu sawa. That's really what the lost child does. So they see this family as a very volatile, it's like a boat that is on the sea, and they're like, I don't want to be the one to rock the boat. So they just disappear. In conversations, like when they come to therapy, in a family therapy, you'll know the lost child because they're the ones who speaks less. Like, even when they are asked for their opinion, they're like, no, it's okay, just like everyone else has said. That's what the lost child does, yeah? Or the one who no one was able to contact to come for the family therapy in the first place. So they feel ignored and neglected, and they mostly come from abusive households because you feel like you don't want to put yourself in the line of the bullet. So you better just stick in your room or step out, you know, or just go and live elsewhere alone. Now, parents, especially narcissistic parents, can use this lost child like the way they use the hero, like the poster child. You see, this family is working because so and so ananga mambo mingi, they are okay, they don't have a lot of things. This is one of my best children. I've heard people saying that. This is my best child. Yeah? They will just do what they are told, they tick the boxes. So they are used like the hero to sort of give an idea to the outside that the family is functional because they don't get into trouble. So how do you know the lost child, or how do you know that you're the lost child? You're a loner, people who would rather be alone. They have difficulty in social skills and connecting with people, and they probably have self-esteem issues because they don't feel, they feel fear about expressing themselves authentically because it might rock the boat. Now, as an adult, if you've played this role for a very long time, you might have difficulty in friendships and romantic relationships, and you may prefer to be alone. And so you, because you feel like emotional entanglements, if I may call them that, or emotional connections make you feel threatened emotionally and physically because of your background, because of your family background. Then there's the last one, which some consider it as a role and others just a syndrome, and it's called the golden child syndrome, or the golden child. Now this is mostly for family with narcissistic parents, and you can check out narcissism and traits of narcissism, but there are parents who are narcissistic, and the golden child comes in as a representative of the qualities that the parent loves. So they will embody the qualities that the parent loves, so that they can be like, the parent can shower themselves. It's like, I want you to be a reflection of me, and I can shower myself with praise because of who I am. So it's like the narcissistic parent doesn't see you, they see themselves. And you hear it in conversations like, yeah, this one is determined like me. This one is like very focused like me, you know? And so you find that this golden child loses themselves because they are really an image, they are seen as an image of their parent. Now, relationship between a golden child and the parent can be very volatile, because remember, you are supposed to represent your parents' good qualities. So the minute you begin to express yourself as yourself and it's not what your parent expects, they can explode on you, they can abuse you. And so even though they are the favorite child of the parent, of the narcissistic parent, they do not have, they don't see a difference between the parent and them. They find it difficult to differentiate between the parent and themselves and their own self. Like, who am I? Who is me? Who is Carol? And who is my mother or my father? They might participate in the abuse of other siblings in order to protect themselves from the parent. And I've seen that a lot, especially with firstborns, because the parent is like, I didn't expect this from you. Why did they do this? Where were you while they were doing this? And so what happens is that you become like a deputy parent. And so you punish your siblings, you torture them, you traumatize them, but you're doing it to protect yourself from your parents. That's one way you can know whether you are a golden child or not. Now, some of the abuse that the parent will abuse the child with will be confused with love by the child. Because even the parents, sometimes they say, I'm doing this because I love you so much. And they harm you emotionally and they harm you physically in a bid to shape you according to their own, the qualities that they want you to embody. Now, what happens in later life for a golden child is that in an attempt to individuate, to make out their own self, their psychological self, they might be defiant, they might be rebellious. And those are people you see in their 30s, 40s. People say, I don't know what happened to them. They just suddenly put on Rasta. They just suddenly started, going to what religion. It's because now they're like, I'm going to be myself. And from favorite child of the parent to something else that the parents do not recognize, because you're going through an attempt to individuate finally. So you're doing everything that is different from your parent that you should actually have done when you are 2 years old, because 2 years old is when you begin to individuate, and that's why 2-year-olds are always saying no, 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 because they're trying to find who they are by refusing who you are. So while in healthy functional families, the roles are fluid, as I mentioned. In dysfunctional families, they are rigid, and you have to stay in your role, and you have to act the way everyone expects you to act. Now, in a healthy functional family, what happens is that all these roles are integrated in each individual's personality, so that within Carol, I have the hero, I have the caretaker, I have the mascot, I have the lost child, and I show up in the roles as need arises in an age-appropriate way. Because I cannot be 3 years and I'm caretaking my parents, unless this is really dysfunctional. So in a functional way, the roles are all in every individual. And depending on the issue that we are dealing with, everyone will show up as inspired. Everyone will show up in a way that is based on their own personal expression. And we are not relying on others to do the role for us. Now, by contrast, the dysfunctional families are there to form continuity and stability for the family system. Now, this stifles, and this is what I want you to know, that the aspect of dysfunctionality in a family is that development of the individual. Getting out of the family is not even there. It's not to be considered, because the dysfunctional family believes if you individuate and become your own person, this family will collapse. And that's the difference between functional and dysfunctional families. So what happens is that if somebody wants to individuate and get out of the family system, because the roles are ingrained in all the rest of the members, somebody will slide into that space whenever an issue or a conflict arises. Now it's like in a dysfunctional family, you have to submerge your own person so that you take up the role. So if you've noticed that you're in any one of those roles, you have had to step aside as your own person and step into this role. I've had many people saying, I have to take care of everyone in my family. And I ask them, do you want to? They say, no, but I have to. You see, so they don't feel like they have an option. And that's really the difference between these roles working functionally and dysfunctionally. Now, what changes can you make? There are a few changes that you can make if you have seen yourself in this role, if you have noticed that there's something off with your family dynamic. And the first one, because I see a lot of people, even when I was doing inner child work, I realized that a lot of people feel that they have been assigned this role by their parents. And so even as they are grown, in their 50s, even in their 60s, there is a subconscious aspect of them that is still waiting for permission from their parents to be themselves, to step out of the role. And so you must begin to give yourself permission to say that this is like a theater play. The play doesn't run 24/7. It's gonna end at some point and we are going to come back on for another show. So please give yourself permission to step in and out of roles in a way that serves you and your mental and emotional health. Now, begin to identify the difficult emotions that you feel that have arisen as a result of your childhood. And of course, another thing I encourage people to do is to journal, list the behaviors, the attitudes, the beliefs that you have that you feel have been inhibiting your progress as an individual. And then beside that, write the behaviors, the attitudes, the beliefs that you would like to replace them with. Because awareness is very key, it's very important you become aware of your internal world. Now, once you have this list of what behaviors and attitudes that you have collected from your childhood experiences that were probably traumatic and painful, and you have now a list of behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs that you want, pick just one and say, this week I'm working on this. I'm working on this behavior. And then practice it until you automate it, until it gets into your subconscious mind. And that way you can begin to change your life consciously. So pick one, work with it. Once you feel you're good, move to the other one. In addition to working on your own, I really encourage people to go for therapy, go for coaching, because it's really important for you to become aware of the extent of the damage. You know, you cannot fix anything until you've seen it. You cannot fix anything until you have acknowledged it. I know this is a pretty sensitive thing because we have been sold this family theme, this facade, that our families are awesome, our families are good, we must love each other, but you must see things as they are so that you can make the changes. Now, even as you're making the changes, even as you're going for therapy, please remember that this is not a one-touch thing. It won't happen like magic. You will have to put in time, effort, work, commitment. And most of all, love yourself. Be compassionate with yourself as you're going through this. Also, don't fall into the victim mindset. Remember that everyone came from a dysfunctional family, including your parents, because there is no school or preparation for parenting. So we just transfer our generational traumas onto our families and we continue. So cut people some slack. Remember that people are doing the best based on what they know now. And now that you know what you know now, you have an array of different choices of how to be, and you can be a totally different person that begins to shift your family system. Again, set clear limits. Remember, if you're doing this work and you've begun this journey of healing, you have to set limits. Remember that you can only do the work within yourself. You cannot work for somebody else. Allow the other person to be who they are. Just work on yourself and work on your limits. Now remember that every part of work that we do is a process, and breaking old patterns can be very, very tasking and can be very difficult. So don't be discouraged if you find yourself falling back into old patterns. Maybe you've gone for a family meeting and you can see the whole drama at play, and you are like, I thought I had worked on this. I thought I am not supposed to feel anxious about this. Remember, it's a very deeply ingrained pattern, probably generational. So always encourage yourself. Tell yourself, oh, I got angry, but not as much as I do. I got angry, but I didn't act on it. I got angry, but I wasn't ashamed that I'm angry, you know? So give yourself permission to fail even, and to fail forward. So fail forward, encourage yourself, and cut yourself some slack, give yourself some little compassion, and get the help that you need. So that's the end of our talk today. Very glad that you could join me, and I'm really encouraging you to sign up for the course. Now the course will go on to discuss about what are these things that bring about dysfunction in families, and what are the effects of growing up in a dysfunctional family? Like, what has that cost me? And then, of course, on the last few hours or the last class, we'll talk about how to heal from all these effects. So make sure you go to Conscious Kenya website and sign up for the course. It's going to be exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing you there. So until then, it's bye-bye.